Hi, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I hope you're doing great. To start, I will be introducing to you our very first assignment for a social data mining class, which is focused on social and open data sources. Throughout this presentation, you'll be expecting everyone in the group to talk about collecting, building, demonstrating, and of course, storing data. Our first task for this assignment is to focus on collecting data from an outside source, which we chose to be Amazon. And in line with that, we are expected to do web scraping. Moving on. The next task is to collect a minimum of 100 entries. So from our outside source, which is Amazon, we found an interesting topic, which is the top 100 books of 2020. This is Amazon's top 100 bestsellers in terms of their book category. It's the most popular products based on sales. Some of the books that made it to the top 5 are the following. There you go. Now let's meet the team. First up, yours truly. I'm Janina Cortez, and now I am tasked to be the group's business analyst. The next person in the group is Ozan Kaya, which is our data scientist, and meet Patel, our business intelligence analyst. Last but not the least, Kelvin Pinto, our Python developer. For this particular project, we are expected to share our YouTube link, which will be shown or which will be filled later once we've done it. And another task that we needed to fulfill, as what was elaborated earlier, is to come up with a data source that can provide us with a minimum of 100 entries, and we found it through this link from Amazon. Also, included in this project/assignment is to choose some tools that can definitely help us achieve the tasks. First, programming language that we used, first tool that we used is definitely Beautiful Soup for web scraping, together with Python. And for our cloud database, which is one of our tasks, we utilized MongoDB. Aside from familiarity, we acknowledge the fact that MongoDB is one of the most reliable free database sources in the internet. And some of the web applications that we've used on this assignment are the following. For web application, we utilized Flask. For programming, we used Python. And for the front end, we used a couple of it. First one would be JavaScript, jQuery, and Ajax. To learn more about how we were able to accomplish this assignment, most of my group mates will be talking about the coding as well as how we executed the tasks. So we will be starting off with Ozan, who will talk about web scraping and the database. Okay, your turn, Ozan. Thank you.
Hello, this is Ozan. I will continue with data model. So as we have a best books list, our data model and variables are kind of self-explanatory. We have author name, which is writer of the book name, title of the book, customers rated, number of the votes it got on Amazon, image URL, image of the book's cover, price in Canadian dollars, rating out of 5 stars, status, which is a kind of dummy variable we have created to help us in creative functions, entry ID, which is its ranking, and primary key. So here you can see an example of an entry. So continuing with the course for web scraping, we have used Beautiful Soup, and we have set our number of pages to 2 as our data website has 2 pages. We will iterate over that and get all the data needed. So we request the data from the website, and using Beautiful Soup we get that data, and after that we search for what we need. So we found, for example, if we needed name, we search it for the attribute and class, which is this, where we found on browser using inspect. So continuing with same for all other variables. For example, for author, we search for this and it is in this class. So it iterates for all entries. After we have found all variable, we append it, and for example, if a name of a book is not found, uh, we will append it as unknown product. And after that, we get the result, and we of course iterate over the number of pages in our case, which is 2, and also update the entry ID, and flattening the data for a prettier look, and just connecting to MongoDB and updating the database and collection there. Now this is how our MongoDB looks. Now I will show our web scraping code and MongoDB. So this is our web scraping code, and just to illustrate it, when I run it, we get this data which is sent to MongoDB, and in MongoDB we can see that our data is stored.
Thank you, Nina and Ozan, for an overview about the project and web scraping. I'm Kelvin Pinto, and I'll now walk you through the Flask web application that we created for this project. We have implemented CRUD on our project for the users to create, read, update, and delete the entries in the database. Let's move on to the Flask web application. We have imported necessary libraries that are required for our project and database connection using the db.py module. In this module, we have created the database connection to the MongoDB using pymongo library. The constants are declared in the constants.py file. These are the constants that are used throughout the web application as well as web scraping. We have three basic routes for in our web application, which is index for index HTML page, add to add new entries, and about, which has the uh, information about the project. Now let's move on to the front end. This is the page we get when we access the website, and to add new entries we can click on add button. When we click on the add button, we get a form that requests the book details. If you see the MongoDB, there are total 100 documents which are imported from web scraping at the moment, and now we can add a new file which will be 101. I have already entered some details for the form. When we click on submit, uh, the data will be the form will request post API created in Flask, which has the endpoint create. The API has variables that store the uh, received values from the form, and the entry ID is a variable which keeps the count of documents that are in the database. This entry ID variable gets incremented on each uh, database entry, and then these variables are converted into a JSON object to insert to the uh, MongoDB collection using insert one function of pymongo. Once the database data is inserted to the database, we can check the uh, MongoDB and refresh it. We can see there are 101 documents. If we want to query the recent data that I added, We can add filters and we can query it. We can see here the 101 record, which is the test details that I have added. Coming to the read part. For the read part, we have it in the front page using tables. For this table, we have used data tables plugin for jQuery JavaScript library. It is highly flexible for any amount of data in the database, and it has some built-in features such as filters, sorts, and many other. We can see that there are 100 entries before we updated the new record. And if we refresh that, we could see there are 101 entries now. So we can search using search button over here. You'll get the new record that we added. How this API works is, when this page is loaded, it sends a request to the uh, Flask web application at the endpoint getBooks. Let's see the code of the getBooks. When the Flask web application gets a request in the endpoint getBooks, it assigns an empty array and queries to the database using find function of PyMongo. Each document will be then appended to the output array, and then it will be converted into a JSON format. The JSON data will then be passed to the front end and will be displayed as table. Now I will pass this on to Meet, who will explain about update and delete APIs that we have on our project.
Thank you, Kelvin. I'll be taking on from here. Hello, my name is Mehmet Patel, and I'll be walking you through the operations update and delete and explaining the functioning of those. Straight away, going to the front end. Here we can see a list of books, which is being displayed with the help of read operation. Here to demonstrate the edit operation, I will hit the edit button to update the data of this entry, which is of the book I Love You to the Moon and Back, with an entry ID of 2. I'll be editing the price from 50 to 58. And I'll hit update and I'll give OK to the confirmation box. And as you can see, it's the first book and the price has been updated. To check it from the database, I'll search for the book. You can see the price is updated from there here as well, which is $58. Going to the code, here is the update function, where here we are defining these variables, and we are setting the data of we are storing the received data, which is for the update of the entry. We are storing that data into these variables, and here in the query we are defining the entry ID to specify which entry to edit, and over here in the data dictionary we are defining the data that we need to update. And then we are giving both query and data as parameter to the function update1 of MongoPy, which will update the records in the database. Moving on to the delete operation. Here, if we want to delete, we simply press delete button to delete this book and give OK to the confirmation. It'll reload. It says successfully deleted, and as you can see, it's not here anymore. And finding the book again will give 0 results, and the book named I Love You to the Moon and Back is deleted. And the delete operation, the method that is defined here is comparatively short. As you can see, the entry ID variable is set. It is defined here with an empty string, and entry ID that is received in the post request that needs to be deleted is stored in the entry ID, and it is sent in the query dictionary and given to the delete one function of MongoPy as a parameter. And this function will delete the record having the entry ID that is received. And that is how both the functions work. And here I will conclude the presentation. And Thank you very much.